Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. An extremely busy day for this USC program. I think headlined by five-star defensive lineman Jahkeem Stewart making it official, committing to USC. But we also have some other storylines to talk about. Most notably, linebackers coach Matt Entz taking the Fresno State head coaching job. And I'm just going to throw this one out early. A weird news day for USC. And is it a coincidence that it came out on National Signing Day? I mean, Matt Entz taking the job at Fresno State. We kind of knew that was going to be a possibility when Matt Entz decided to join the staff. He was a head coach of the future for some sort of program. But then you get a news report from The Athletic about Lincoln Riley being tied to the UCF job. Weird day, weird timing for these stories to come out. If I were to pull USC fans and said, hey, you wake up this morning on National Signing Day, what commitment would you like to lock in for USC? 100% of USC fans are taking Jahkeem Stewart. We obviously all loved Madden, and we think Madden has a bright future, wanted him to come to USC. He goes to Notre Dame. So overall, a kind of mixed bag for USC on signing day. I want to talk about Jahkeem Stewart because not only is Jahkeem Stewart a really good football player, but I think there are some other implications about this commitment that tell me something. And then talk about some linebacker coach candidates as well. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the USC fans, can't thank you guys enough. It's been a wild last 6 months on the recruiting trail on the football field in 2024. I've personally had a blast talking ball with you guys in the comment section. All the fight ons, it means the absolute world. So appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into this one. So let's start with Jahkeem Stewart. Now, we could go into the film and just see a grown man dominating the high school ranks. I want to choose to go a little bit of a different route. And we've talked about Jahkeem Stewart a couple of times. One of my biggest takeaways for USC winning this recruiting battle is they ponied up in the NIL department, which was something USC needed to address. You go back 12 months ago to signing day last year, but I think more importantly, that transfer portal time period, USC missed out on a lot of key guys because they weren't really being competitive in the NIL side of things. I think this commitment victory for USC is telling you one thing, and that is they were competitive in NIL for a guy like Jahkeem Stewart. If you wanted to land Jahkeem Stewart, one of the more coveted defensive linemen that we see in the 2025 cycle, you were going to need to be prepared from the NIL department. I think USC was. Secondly, and I think most excitingly, I think Jahkeem Stewart's one of those players that has the potential to really change the way that people look at this USC program. And what I mean by that is George is the perfect example. If you're an elite defensive lineman, where do you want to first look? You probably look at Georgia. I don't know if USC is popping out to these elite caliber defensive linemen as a place where you can go and dominate, get developed into an NFL draft pick. Jahkeem Stewart has that ability to morph into what I think is just a freakishly dominant interior defensive lineman. And if you get that from Jahkeem Stewart over the next couple of years, can that potentially change the perspective in terms of how recruits view USC, specifically how defensive line recruits look at USC? That's one of the questions that I think is worth exploring. We had the same conversation. Many of y'all know I'm a Michigan fan, with Bryce Underwood at the quarterback position for Michigan. Can Bryce Underwood change how quarterbacks look at Michigan? That's kind of what we're hoping for. I think you could see a very similar thing with a guy like Jahkeem Stewart and maybe a guy like Cam Fowler too, who really turned it up his last couple of weeks of his true freshman year in 2024. That's probably what I'm most excited about. I think everybody knows you're getting a real dude in Jahkeem Stewart. Now, I think the second storyline to talk about, Matt Entz accepting the head coaching position at Fresno State. Again, super weird timing for that story to come out and for that news to break. Unfortunate timing for USC. I don't think Matt Entz purposely tried to sewer USC on signing day. Now, the Athletic reporting about Lincoln Riley and UCF, that was questionable by the Athletic and weird. Let's talk about some linebacker candidates that USC could go after. Now, this is kind of a preliminary discussion. We'll expand this hot board, if you will, over the next couple of days. What are you looking for in your linebacker coach, your next linebacker coach for USC, I think you're looking for a couple of different things. And I think most notably, let's get a California presence on this staff. And what I think Danton Lynn allows you to do is, you got a brilliant, brilliant defensive coordinator. You want good position coaches around the defensive coordinator, but we know Danton Lynn in terms of player development is going to be there. When I'm looking at the next position coach at linebacker for USC, give me a coach that has roots in California. Give me a coach that has relationships in the state of California. If this thing is going to work out for Lincoln Riley, he's going to fundamentally need to change how he's getting his talent. It's not sustainable to just ignore the state of California like Lincoln Riley has. And we kind of saw that play out. Have you seen all the decommitments? There's like a list on Twitter of all the decommitments that USC's had. It's not a coincidence that most of those guys are not from California. It's hard to hold on to those elite players that are not in the state of California, because guess what? Kirby Smart ain't giving up on them. Kalen DeBoer ain't giving up on them. Hugh Freeze ain't giving up on them. Really hard to ignore your backyard. And I feel like Lincoln Riley hasn't done a good enough job really fostering those relationships with some of these elite schools across California in terms of getting talent. Chris Claiborne, USC alum, grew up in the state of California. And what I think special about Chris Claiborne, he was on staff in 2020 for USC as an analyst. He's now kind of developed himself as a position coach. He was at Arizona State for 2 years coaching linebackers. Now he believes with the St. Louis Battlehawks. Bring him back home. And not only do you think the recruiting at the linebacker position would go in the right direction awfully quickly, but he's one of those guys that he can go check out other kids at other positions. But those relationships that he has in the state of California, that connection that he can build, that's important. I go and look at Dan Lanning and what he's doing at Oregon. And I know USC fans hate to hear it. As a Michigan fan, we kind of had to match what Ohio State was doing too at points. Dan Lanning has surrounded himself with coaches that are dogs on the recruiting trail. I think you're going towards that with Lincoln Riley. Getting a guy like Coach Henderson certainly has helped. You want to fill your staff with those kind of guys. I'll look at Chris Claiborne and say he could be an absolute weapon for USC on the recruiting trail, as well as a position coach and as well as kind of knowing what the standard is at USC. And you want to get back to where USC is really on top of the college football world. Go get some players who've been a part of it. That's kind of my take on it. I think Chris Claiborne would be a really good hire. A couple other names I'll throw out. Matt House at LSU, bad defensive coordinator at LSU. There's no way around that. Got fired. Has always been a really good linebackers coach. He's currently coaching the linebackers in Jacksonville in the NFL. He's done a good job coaching linebackers. We know he's not a good defensive coordinator. Maybe he's looking for a spot to get another shot at a DC job. So it would be a nice stepping stone. And a guy that's proven at the linebacker position. Another name that I'll throw out there, George Hilo, former Michigan linebackers coach. Now he's working for Colorado as an analyst. George Hilo, I thought, always did a good job for us. And I thought linebackers played good under him. And he's been a part of Georgia staff. He's been a part of Alabama staff with Nick Saban. And so I look at George Hilo, and that's something I look for. Like when I want to, if I was in charge of hiring position coaches, give me coaches that have been a part of dominance, been a part of winning, because they know what it looks like. George Hilo is one of those guys. Those are some of the names that popped up again. Jahkeem Stewart, that's I don't want to underplay that news, but I also kind of wanted to talk about the future and where USC goes from here. And so we'll wrap it up there. Would love for you guys to fire down some linebacker coaching candidates in the comment section. We'll do a little bit of a bigger discussion on that in the next couple of days. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.